Oftentimes, the most important stakeholder trait that we need to consider when trying to understand the perspective of those we're going to seek to get information from is stakeholder attitude. We need to understand who supports the project or the solution that's under consideration and who doesn't. What are the underlying reasons for any resistance where it exists? And are there any ways that we can accommodate this by tailoring requirements to better meet preferences or needs that they might have? In other words, how can we build support in a way that ensures that the final product best meets business needs, not only from a high-level definition standpoint, but also for those on the ground who are going to be most directly impacted by or expected to interface with whatever solution it is that we recommend? Supporters can certainly be helpful because they can provide us with information and they're easier to work with perhaps in many cases. But for business analysts, those resisting can be even more helpful because oftentimes resistance indicates that there are requirements that we have not yet cataloged that should be included in the final project. Let's look at a few potential examples. Here, let's say that we've got a person or a group of people who feel that their needs are unfulfilled. We could see this, for example, in the healthcare field. It could be that thus far in our research regarding a new electronic health record system, we have spoken extensively with hospital administrators, with doctors and specialists, with the IT staff, and so on. However, we've left a very important group out, perhaps the most important group. In this case, nurses don't feel like we've been properly taking their opinions into account when setting up this new system and helping to define what the platform needs to be capable of accomplishing. See, it turns out that most of the time, while it might be important that doctors have access to this information in this platform and that it's important that they help to define what information will be stored there, when it comes to the usability and the workflow, they're not inputting their own data. Instead, this often falls to nurses and support staff, who are the ones who are expected to add this and therefore are the ones that will most often be interfacing directly with this new solution. As such, their needs are just as important, if not more so, than those who we've spoken with already. Let's say that we've got a group who perceives their requirements as being unmet. For example, let's say that a proposed call center software doesn't address the primary concerns of frontline agents. Instead, we've received a dictate from an organizational level that we need to reduce hold times and that we need to make sure to somehow increase customer satisfaction with our new system. Well, we could say that we've done so by moving to a new voice-activated system instead of one that relied on dial tones as it was in the past, and perhaps we can provide the ability to call users back rather than have them wait on hold. This is all well and good, but we haven't fixed the true issue here, which we might discover when speaking with some of those frontline agents. The reality is the scripting system that they rely on in order to give them the information they need to convey to the customer on the phone is simply not up to date, doesn't include information that's timely, and is difficult to operate. As such, what we thought might have been an issue with the way that calls were being routed is in fact much more an issue of how calls can be handled based on the software available to our own employees. As another example, let's say that there are concerns that exist regarding training. Oftentimes, this can be a great point of resistance, even if, in theory, stakeholders agree or support the solution. Here, for example, let's say that we are helping a police department to deploy a new system of body cameras for their officers. Officers in general don't mind the idea of these body cams being implemented, we find through some of our discussions, but we still seem to be encountering some resistance. It turns out, once we've dug into this issue further, that one of the major issues here is that officers simply aren't sure if proper training is going to be provided. Are they going to understand how to operate the camera systems accordingly and what protocol should be for using them? How their police work should change, if at all, based on those cameras being used versus when they have not been used in the past? They don't want to get in trouble for not having the camera rolling when it's supposed to be just because they didn't know how to work it right. In that case, perhaps we're seeing resistance because there's simply uncertainty about a new technical solution being deployed, and training could help to eliminate a lot of this. Let's say that there are resource limitations that could be a source of resistance. Here, we return to the example of a few moments ago where a functional manager might be worried that a project or even just the business analysis process could sap valuable human resources at a time when they already feel like they are severely overwhelmed with tasks to see to. They might support our analysis work in theory, but when it requires us to take a day or two of her employees' time in order to elicit information from them, that's a problem. In that case, we need to work to help the functional manager understand the value of what we're doing, why it's critical not only to the company at large, but also to her department, for them to be able to actively participate and have a voice in what our final list of requirements might be. Finally, we might also see circumstances where either the past or present experience of certain employees might frame the way that they perceive this analysis and this potential project is being conducted. For example, we might encounter a resistant IT manager, worried that employees will just blame him for all the issues during project work because, well, he's been there before. The last time a major platform rolled out, everyone just blamed him without understanding his job was just to follow the orders and to service the platform that was being dictated to him from higher up above. Instead, they all thought it was his fault that the software was updated and that it was his fault that they didn't understand how things worked. In this case, we have to take this information into account, do a better job of communicating what his role should be, and who employees who have concerns should actually contact and be in touch with in order to solve any issues they might run into. In many cases, it may well be this IT manager, which in that case, the onus really falls on us to make sure that the rollout is smooth, that we take their advice in order to understand how we can minimize any of this sort of trouble on the back end once we go ahead and launch that new system, and also to provide effective training that can make sure that everyone really understands what they're doing from day one, rather than frantically overloading our IT department because they were caught unaware by the changes.